Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. It's official, Andy Ruiz Jr. is set to return to the ring on the 1st of May, a week later than originally was going to be the case. He'll be facing Chris Arreola, and this is a pay-per-view event on Fox. And interestingly, the price for the pay-per-view is listed at a lower price compared to normal pay-per-views in the United States. This one will be $50. So we'll get to that talking point in a moment. But first, let's get to the statements from the fighters with this fight now official. Andy Ruiz Jr. says, "I can't wait to get back in the ring on May 1. Training with Coach Eddie in his gym has been amazing. I'm around great fighters like Canelo Alvarez, and we're putting in the work so I can look better than ever." And recently, I'll just interject there, so he started training with Eddie Reynoso. So this has been a move where we've seen Andy Ruiz Jr. looking trimmer than he certainly was for that rematch with Anthony Joshua at the end of 2019, which was his last fight. And of Chris Arreola, he says, "I've known Chris Arreola since I turned professional. He's a Mexican warrior just like me, and I expect him to come at me with everything he's got. This is going to be an action-packed event between fighters who do not go backwards. I will be smart and ready to do whatever it takes to get the win and put myself back in position to become heavyweight champion again." And Chris Arreola, who is now 40 years old, coming off a loss at towards the end of 2019 against Adam Kownacki, he says training with Joe Goossen is tedious, hard work. We're doing everything that we can so that when Ruiz and I face each other, fight fans will get treated to an all-out war between the two best Mexican-American heavyweights to ever step in the ring. This matchup should be a fan-friendly fight, and I plan on winning behind all of my hard work. So Chris Arreola there, and he's been working with Joe Goossen for this fight, and this was meant to actually take place last year, so they have been working together on and off at respective times in the past, 8 or 9 months, preparing for this fight. And actually, if you see here on screen, this was a photo that Chris Arreola posted to his social media, and you can see, I think he looks in pretty good shape for Chris Arreola, so it's clear that he has been putting in the work, and some people may look at Joe Goossen and the denim there and cringe, but in terms of Arreola, he's coming in, probably for him, some of the best shape of his career, and he will need to be because he really is up against it. In all honesty, this is a fight that should have really happened, 5 or 6 years ago. That's when it probably would have made the most sense, at least in terms of a competitive sense. But this has been a long talked about, rumored fight that was going to happen at some point. And really, this is the last opportunity, surely, for it to happen. Arreola at the back end of his career, he's 40 years old now, and, this really is sort of a nice little handshake to sort of walk off into the sunset. He said after the Adam Kownacki fight that because of that fight, and it was very back and forth, fan-friendly, although no controversy in the decision, Arreola lost that one clearly, that he felt like he could continue. And now he's sort of lucked into a pay-per-view fight against the former unified champion. And for Ruiz Jr., first fight back since the rematch loss to Anthony Joshua, it's going to be good to see him back in the ring. And as we've been seeing, he's been whipping himself into something approaching career best shape, if not career best shape. Bearing in mind, Ruiz, when he turned pro, he was always, quite a big guy, heavy guy, quite a bit on the scales. His lowest weight is in the mid-240s. And judging by some of what we've been seeing on social media with the stuff that's being put out, he certainly looks like he's going to be coming in somewhere in or around that weight. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if it was his career best weight, which I think, would need to be under 244 pounds. But, if he's 250-ish, somewhere around there, well, we know that's been a pretty decent weight for Ruiz Jr. He's some of his best fights have been between 255, 260. So as long as it's not taking something away from him, like punch resistance, for example, I think, a lot of us just agree agree that Andy Ruiz Jr. in better shape is going to be more of a problem than the one that turned up at 283 pounds for the rematch with Joshua. Certainly the extra rubble doesn't help, and obviously the hand speed is going, and the foot speed. And that's one of the things for Ruiz Jr. He's got blazing hand speed, but his foot speed has always just been a tad behind, and that's one of the things I think that's held him back at times in certain fights. He is a guy that likes to effectively be a front foot counterpuncher. So Ruiz Jr., if he's coming in lighter and better shape, the cardio's better, everything's in a little bit better condition, I think that's going to aid his foot speed, which really for him is going to be a good thing. But I don't mind the fight because obviously Ruiz Jr. coming off such a long layoff is going to need some activity, and this should prove to be so, I think, for however long this lasts. And this may end up going the distance. I don't know. Andy Ruiz Jr. is probably going to win this, and win this quite comfortably, at least in terms of, I think he's going to get the better of the action in pretty much all of the rounds. Kind of like Kovnarski did against Arreola back in 2019. But it'll be one of those competitive fights where Arreola's having success, but just not as much as the other guy to win enough rounds to really either get a decision. I mean, who knows as well. He could end up getting taken out in this. But I do think, as Arreola sort of stated, this is going to be a fan-friendly fight. I like the fight from that sense, and in terms of the pay-per-view price, so that clearly reflects that. I mean, when it was announced that this fight was going to be happening, and it was originally mooted for April the 24th, and now it's been pushed out a week. When it was said that this fight was going to be on pay-per-view, the reaction wasn't great on social media and from fans in general online. People were saying, really? You know, Ruiz has been out of the ring for this length of time. Arreola is 40 coming off a loss. This is pay-per-view. And I think it reflects that obviously Ruiz wants to get paid. He has certain expectations. But the price point here, $49.95, reflects that this isn't a premier sort of fight. They've obviously had to put it on their pay-per-view because they probably can't pay Ruiz what he wants to be paid now, because he's the former unified champion. His profile is much bigger than it used to be. So $49.95 reflects that. I think that they have to get this guy paid, but also they can't charge the fans that, because they probably know charging $75 or something is just going to probably result in much fewer buyers than they would otherwise want. Even at $50, some people will balk at the price, but I think that's a much more reasonable price than $75. So clearly they've been looking at the sort of the lay of the land here and going, okay, we have to be a little bit more realistic here. And even at that price, some people would be like, well, I'll watch it the next day for free. Anyway, what do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.